Ladies and gentlemen, Brian Harris, the President and CEO of H&H Metal Source, will be moderating our panel and will introduce the rest of our panelists. Brian, to you.
Thank you, Lee. Good morning to you all. Also, as the Chairman of the Downtown Development Authority, I'd like to extend my welcome to you as well. The panel discussion we've assembled for you here today involves a case study on the medical mile, the mechanisms and the benefits of collaboration, as well as the benefits to the community. The members of today's panel are extremely distinguished. Their bios are provided, I believe, in your programs, and I commend them to your reading. Any one of them individually could speak for hours on their story with regard to the medical mile, but instead, they have graciously agreed to subject themselves to my timekeeping and moderation for this quick discussion, and I emphasize quick. We want to share with you two observations: how collaboration can actually evolve, and then what it can mean to place, which is really what this is all about, place. By the way, we view place not only as the immediate neighborhoods and the urban core, but really the bedrooms and the broader region. So, two rounds of questioning. The first will be on collaboration, and the second will be on place. I'm obliged to set up a little bit of the background, however, so indulge me for just about 2 minutes when I give you some facts about the medical mile. And I'm going to read them so that I'm ensured to be accurate. The medical mile is a public-private community collaborative. It combines tertiary and quaternary clinical care with Big Ten medical education and classic world-class clinical research. Normally, such environments are only found in large academic centers. Instead, through the medical mile, Grand Rapids took the economic development vision of business leaders and the joint work of large integrated health systems, plus competing educational centers, and the private independent research to create a collaboration that is in total stronger than had been contained in one single entity. The result is tangible benefits that not only each medical mile resident receives, but also the healthcare, education, and the broader communities. Some statistics here. There are 2 million square feet of world-class facilities here on the mile at a total cost investment of about $1 billion, actually a little bit more than $1 billion. Now, that's in a community whose central business district, mind you, is only 6 million square feet and worth approximately $500 million. Now, that's sans the municipal facilities themselves. It's pretty significant. Clinical services are provided at a level of sophistication only seen in larger communities. We've got renowned heart, lung, and bone marrow transplantation available here to a community of about 200,000, and that's on a scale to be adequate to serve almost 1.5 million to 2 million folks. It both keeps families and employees in the local community, and it creates a destination healthcare, and we'll focus on that a little bit later. There is cultural change here, resulting from a knowledge cluster of scientists and clinicians from several dozen different countries practicing here. We host global medical meetings. In fact, the herpes group was here this summer, and the reproduction group was going to be here next summer, so draw your own conclusions. Thank you, Steve. Here, innovation thrives at the core of drug development and medical device production through cooperation between engineers, educators, and clinicians. Only a couple more. There is employment for countless graduates of both MSU, Grand Valley, and other schools, folks in biochemistry and lab techs who, this is important, who once had to leave Grand Rapids to find work can now call Grand Rapids home. That's very important as far as talent retention. And the last thing is that it's estimated that some 35,000 people traffic this hill at any one time, so it's a big center. There's a lot more to talk about, but let's turn our attention then to the panel. To my left here, the first question will go to Birgit Close, who is the President and CEO of The Right Place. And now, Birgit, you're in the economic development business. But you would, of course, know that Grand Rapids is blessed with a great deal of philanthropic activity. Was the mile solely an effort of the heart?
Well, first of all, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Grand Rapids and what I call Medical Square Mile, because there is also an institution to the south of here now called Mercy Health that is part of this. But let me be clear, Medical Mile as a moniker came much later. It wasn't really an intentional development. We were fortunate enough in 1996 to receive a phone call from a gentleman by the name of Dave Van Andel in my office, who gave me the heads up that his family would endow a privately funded world-class research institute right across the street. My immediate, as an economic developer who had been working in this community at that time for about 8 years, was the jump in my head: what does that mean to diversify our economy? I had a call from Mayor Logie then, who called me about 10 minutes after David's call and said, what does this really mean? And it immediately, what came to mind is, what will that mean to Butterworth Hospital at that time across the street? What will it mean to education? And most importantly, what will it mean to what I call spin-offs? And the mayor was, spin-offs? What are spin-offs? Well, spin-offs comes out of medical, of research. And we have never had an opportunity to do medical and world-class research. In our board, the Right Place Board, in collaboration with VAI, took that about 3 or 4 months later and hired Deloitte Consulting to say, okay, we're getting something that we had not expected, absolutely not expected, to be in the development of medical world-class research. What does it mean? How do we take it and develop it into an economic development strategy, not just a standalone institution? The cons were way longer than the pros, if David recalls. It was, you should be doing this at the University of Michigan campus. You should not be doing this in this location. You don't have venture capital. You don't have incubators. You don't have. And we're like, so we don't have, so we create. And so the job of our organization became really, how do we create an economic development strategy around an incredible gift? And it involved creating a smart zone. You're sitting in it, and which includes an incubator at Grand Valley. Venture capital is now available. We're marketing this medical square mile as a destination, not only for health, but for researchers. So it became really, it took on a life of its own, and it involved a number of collaborative partners from whom you will be hearing shortly.
Great. Thank you, Birgit. So if I got this right, philanthropy is a key ingredient, of course.
Absolutely.
But the real legs get developed when you create a strategic vision, and that vision is embraced by community leaders, thought leaders, and so on. Very good. Thank you. Rick Breon, President and CEO of Spectrum Health. So you've got the high ground up here, right? I mean, and why not just grow this whole thing sort of on your own, as maybe many corporations with these kind of assets in another community might do? What is it about collaboration that makes this work?
Well, Brian, first of all, let me also say welcome to Grand Rapids and thank Mayor Hartwell for the weather. But Spectrum Health was formed as the merger of 2 hospitals back in the mid-90s. And it was originally done to stem the medical arms race that was going on. It was really economically based. It was, if we can pull these 2 organizations together, we could maybe reduce duplication, we could reduce the kind of things that we have. Well, since then, it really has morphed quite a bit more from an economic perspective to a strategic imperative. It really became part of the strategy of the community, and it's become much more than just the sum of the parts. Now, as you well know, there are hospitals across the country who merge together in just about every city. Sometimes those work and sometimes they don't. And a lot of it has to do with why you're doing it. Economics can certainly be one of the reasons. But it really is more about what's the larger vision. What are you trying to capture here? And I think what this community did back in the late 90s and really all through the early 2000s is that look at a bigger vision. We're really looking at something bigger than just one institution. So to answer your question, Brian, I think the collaboration that exists between medical education, research, clinical care really makes the medical mile something that's attractive. When we go out and recruit physicians, in many instances, these physicians want an appointment to a medical school. They want some kind of research capability, because many of them also do research in addition to clinical care. And if you can put all those things collaboratively together in one location, I think you'll have something that sells to people who want to come to Grand Rapids. Now, we are getting better at this. I would like to say that we are a well-oiled machine. We are not. We're getting much better at this collaboration. We're getting much better at trying to make sure that the sum of our parts works. And I think the thing that's probably most important than anything else, the thing that gets noticed by people who come here, it's not the facilities, although they're great. It's not really the logistics of everything or the people. It's really the attitude of the people that makes a difference. The attitude here is a very can-do. We look at something, and if there's obstacles, which there will always be obstacles, as Birgit inundated, there's a ton of those kinds of things, but we get past those because we're looking at something we can do together. So it's a very impressive array of services, and I think it's better served being in a collaborative effort than trying to do it on your own.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. And so there's a bit of sausage making that goes on behind the scenes. So we're not trying to present perfection in the art of collaboration. It can be a messy process, but there seems to be a determination and commitment to make it happen.
There is a tremendous amount of optimism here, so whatever the issue is, I think people try to correct and try to solve the issue. And we know starting tomorrow, we're going to have our hands full with lots of issues out there with health reform, but we're not afraid of it. I think this is a very can-do kind of attitude here.
Excellent. Thank you, Rick. President of Grand Valley State University, Tom Haas. I'm going to have to peek around the corner here to see you, Tom. So you've got about 25,000 enrolled here from your primary campus in Allendale, throughout the region, and of course I see the name up on the building here at the top of the hill. It's sort of an opening question for you. What is your participation on the mile from an educational standpoint, and does that sort of dilute the focus? If I read from your bio, the focus is on liberal education, fostering critical thinking, problem solving, and cultural understanding. How does that connect?
Well, we heard it from Bruce. It is STEAM. It's with the arts. And I think that Grand Valley State University is part of the mortar that keeps these bricks together up here on the hill. And our ability, we're very young, I'll describe this in a second, our ability to be flexible, to anticipate, to adapt is partly part of our core value set at Grand Valley State University. I mentioned 25,000 students. Today is a historic day in our history. On the 30th of September 1963, we welcomed the first 226 students to Grand Valley over in Allendale. Then in 81, we opened up here in Grand Rapids. So, and now, as you mentioned, almost 25,000. But if I drill down a little bit more, we are investing in engineering and STEM and health professions and in nursing. We have grown now from those 226 students with now almost 100,000 alums, most of those individuals living here in West Michigan. We represent 47 states and 82 countries here at Grand Valley. And then here in Grand Rapids, we have what's called the Pew Campus. We have 40 acres. We've invested about $250 million since 1981, and about 12,000 students come back and forth from Allendale to take courses right here on the Hill and in Grand Rapids. And right here at our center, we have over 5,000 students daily taking courses. So our contribution, I think, really is in light of talent and talent development. And it really does come down to collaboration. We can see right up here, and responding to community needs. In terms of our investments in health and health sciences, we have undergraduate programs, we have graduate programs leading to applied doctorates, we have PT, PA, biomedical sciences, health administration, OT, dosimetry, a couple of new ones in public health, and a new one in speech pathology. And we work together very collaboratively. I've known Dr. Simon for now over 20 years. We came here and started a great program to attract and keep students right here that want to be doctors. They take some of our best and brightest, and we have those individuals out of our honors college, and they can move right on into MSU's medical school. We have around 7,000 internships this year with clinicals, and we work within the business community right here in Grand Rapids. We have our professional master's degree with Spectrum. We have still student affiliations with the Van Andel Research Institute. We have interprofessional work in a number of agencies, including the Saints. And so we really are getting it done, but only through collaboration and the complement of each other.
That's fascinating. I mean, the list was a little bit dizzying of all the things that you're doing in terms of enriching your curriculum and the variety there. I love the brick and mortar metaphor, the idea that there's not just opportunities explored by the big pieces, by example, at Spectrum, but also the opportunities that lay between them and creating that energy. That's
Absolutely. It's all about networking again, and we have the great bricks, great mortar, and at the end of the day, what happens inside those, as we've been sharing, really is critical.
great. I love the continuity of the story. David Van Andel here, who's the chairman and CEO of the Van Andel Institute, just across the way. We call it the VAI sometimes for short. There's a lot of pretty cool biomedical science going on over there. We had an interesting conversation earlier where you spoke of Tier 1 visioning, and you also spoke about knowledge clusters. Could you perhaps separately even speak to their collaborative application here on the Mile? What is Tier 1 visioning, and what do knowledge clusters have to do with the Mile?
Be happy to. Good morning, everyone. As I explained earlier in another conversation, I believe a community needs to have what is known as Tier 1 and Tier 2 visionaries. Tier 1 visionaries, and I'll use the analogy of golf, which I'm not very good at, but trying to get better, are the types of people that can stand in the middle of a forest and instead of seeing all the trees, can see a golf course and how it would lay out. These types of people are the types of people you need to get the process started. They need to be the ones that can look out over the landscape, see where the opportunities are, and say, we can do something here because of this. Tier 2 visionaries, then, are the ones that can take that decision and add to it. And you'll see this all throughout Grand Rapids, where an initial decision was made by a Tier 1 visionary, and there were a lot of follow-on decisions that occurred as a result of that. None of that, however, is going to change unless in our new economy that we're creating, we create what I call knowledge clusters. And the knowledge clusters, I think, are going to be very vital to the long-term longevity of any economy. It's not, as they've said earlier, the buildings. It's not about building brick and mortar. It's about what happens inside those buildings. Attracting the intellectual capital, attracting those types of people that can not only think out of the box, but have the gifts to do so, and then giving them the environment from which to be able to play. It's very important also that a community decide where it wants to apply in that base. Knowledge clusters are the beginning of the process, and you're not going to be able to do everything. So you have to decide, where do we want to participate? In this case, we chose life sciences. But life sciences begins a process that over time adds to it all sorts of things. The immediacy is what you see sitting on the stage today. There's collaborations that occur between the hospitals, between the universities, between the research institute. But then what happens in the next stage is even more critically important, which is the spin-offs that occur. A discovery is made. You begin to develop a device, a drug, something else that goes along with that. The long-term economic promise that comes with that is being able to place those spin-offs within the community and create an entire new industry. But it all begins right here in filling these buildings with the smart people that can make that happen. And it all starts, in this case, by collaborating with all of our partners. Yeah, you can try to do it all on your own. There are some that have tried to do that, the Mayo model or something like that. But it's very difficult, and it's a very long runway to get to go. But if you do it with collaboration, you can do it much quicker, you can do it much more economically, and you can do it, I think, much more effectively, because you can be good at what you do, and your partners can be good at what they do.
Very interesting. So I first think of the movie, what is it, if you build it, they will come kind of thing. I mean, that's the promise. But I think the real key point here, maybe you didn't say it aloud, but the risk is great here on being the visionary and trying to follow through, because the promise is even greater. Is that correct?
The risk is always great. Out of the 10 great ideas, you're lucky if you have one that works. Out of the 100 discoveries, you're lucky if you have a few of those that make it to the end. The risk is always great, and it's the visionaries that have the ability to not only see the opportunity, but also to be able to mitigate that risk to a degree. You never eliminate it, but you can mitigate it. And if you can find the way to do that most effectively, you got a greater chance for success.
Great. Good message. Thank you, David. Luana Simon, the president of the Michigan State University. Thank you for hosting us today. Really appreciate it. This is a great space and a great place.
It looks much greater after Steelcase and the team in Grand Rapids put it all together, I'll tell you that.
Excellent. Well, our thanks to Steelcase indeed. MSU is, their home is in our capital city, Lansing. I know you're going to correct me on this, but why build a medical school here in Grand Rapids?
Well, we were already here.
Okay.
Interestingly, we're a community-based medical school. We have two medical schools, a College of Human Medicine, a College of Osteopathic Medicine. Consistent with the land grant tradition, the idea was that we would start students in East Lansing and then they would spread out across the state in order to enhance the quality of care and medical education across the state. So the College of Human Medicine from its beginning had students in 3rd and 4th year classes in Grand Rapids. We were sponsoring residency programs on behalf of the community. The question was, as David said, what's the big idea? And the big idea was to plant the medical school in a very different way here, expand the number of students participating in medical education. So at any given time, we have 800 medical students in the College of Human Medicine, and 400 of them are here, and 400 are spread out all over the state in a community-based model, classic land grant approach. The idea was to elevate the game of every partner. And I use elevate because each of us wanted something different. Big ideas, big aspirations. So the real power of this collaboration is the way in which each of us have elevated the other in very interesting ways. We've been able to expand, but also make better medical education. There'll be some new developments I think you'll be hearing about in the course of the next few months about a change in the concept of medical education that would not be possible without the partnerships here. In addition, we were able to strengthen research by augmenting and complementing the work that was already in Grand Rapids, the plans that were already here to help us be better. But this can-do spirit is what it's all about. And without that, then you run into so many little nits that you don't have the strength to get over and you can stop. And I must tell you, there were many, many of those. But it was the community's mission under which this project is the implementation. It isn't our missions kind of merged together. It's the community's idea of what it wanted. And we're all part of that big dream. And it's exciting to be here.
Mm-hmm. Very good. You know, one of the lessons that I think I picked up when I was at CEOs for Cities in Portland was they talked about their transportation and the rail program. And once they made the commitment to put iron rail, I mean, right there in the street, that sent a signal. They always had sort of urban transportation buses, but that commitment, is that similar here by putting this structure, this significant structure here, a signal?
It is a signal, and the other way I would think about it is for those of you who live in major metropolitan areas, and it takes you forever to get across the city. It only takes about an hour to get from here to East Lansing. And so there isn't a sense of definition, so there's a free flow as well, not simply of the people who are here, but let's say the veterinarians who are very critical to drug trials. Those people can easily get here and be part of the work. So, but Grand Rapids for the College of Human Medicine is really the hub, and we plan to expand further a little bit down the hill because unfortunately our partners are too successful. And as a result of that, we've been bunking in with Grand Valley, we've been bunking in with VAI and with the hospitals, and we'll continue to bunk in as long as they'll permit us. But they're all so successful that we're going to have to sort of think about some new space as well.
Great. Well, we look forward to the development down the hill yet. There's property available, I hear. Roger Spulman, if I have it right, you're the regional president for Trinity, is that correct? As well as the CEO for Mercy Health.
That's right.
Very good.
That's right.
So you know I don't mean to be sort of indelicate about this, but with all this development going on, with Spectrum, a competitor, so to speak, right? Central, and I see your name on the building, and just a little bit to the east there. Isn't this really a competitive Isn't this more of a competitive threat? How do you view this activity as not a competitive threat?
Well, again, thanks, Brian, for the question. That's what people would like to think of, that we're competitors. And we are competitors, but we're not enemies. And when we talk about the medical mile, and I really like Birgit's characterization of it, the medical square mile, because we're just right over there. I can see our hospital, and we're our Grand Rapids Hospital. And Trinity is a national corporation, healthcare organization. We're in 21 states, 85 hospitals across the country, and we have great assets right here in West Michigan and in this region. And when this opportunity for the medical school to move to Grand Rapids came about, and even before that with VAI, David, those two projects were so fundamental to the success of what we're talking about today. And I would venture to say that they could not have been successful at all without extraordinary collaboration that took place between everyone here and a lot of other people. And there are other medical organizations, Metro and Mary Free Bed, and there are just ripples all across this community that have contributed to the great success. And so when the decision was made to at least consider moving the medical school here, Steve Heacock, who worked for David at the time, he facilitated a discussion. And there was a choice to be made among the stakeholders. The stakeholders could have said, no, I'm going to compete, or I'm going to duplicate, or I'm going to do that myself. And the decision, after a year of discussion among those stakeholders, was no. In the best interest of this community is if we collaborate to make this happen. And you might be surprised to know that Rick and I meet regularly to talk about what can we do that's not competitive that can benefit this community. And I enjoy those times. It's really, we have great resources to be able to apply to this community and make the community better. And that's exactly what happened in moving the medical school to this area. It's given great opportunity for all of our medical staff to have appointments with the medical schools. We've had, as Luana said, we've had a long history of the College of Osteopathic Medicine in Grand Rapids and Muskegon, and this region has been the beneficiary of recruiting those primary care physicians back to this area. As Rick said, tomorrow's an important day as we kick off the Affordable Care Act. The pressure point is, will there be enough primary care providers to make that, to power that? Well, Michigan State University has made a tremendous contribution to this region in providing primary care doctors all across the region. And so I think we've got great opportunity to be successful.
Excellent. Great perspective. I don't think you actually used the phrase, but I think we've talked before, and someone in a previous presentation here played with the word collaboration, and I think they called it co-liberation, and I don't recall.
Co-laboring.
Exactly. We speak of co-opetition here.
Right.
Is that correct? Is that
Yeah.
just another way of looking at cooperating in a competitive
As
way?
I said, we still compete, but none of us would be as good as we are without the benefit of all the activity and all the synergy that's created in this area. And I'll tell you, if any of you have young people who are considering a career in healthcare, you have to look at this area. Because with Grand Valley, with Michigan State, both medical schools active here, with Ferris, and the number of allied health professionals they train, on and on and on, the list goes. Within walking distance, the Van Andel Institute, there is so much here, and if you want to talk about value for your dollar, there aren't very many places that would give you as rich an experience. It's because of the cooperation of all of these entities. And you could say we're competitors. The universities, they compete for the same students, but at the end of the day, the whole region really benefits because of it.
Thank you, Roger. I appreciate that. We're going to sort of go to round two, and I think we've got a little bit more exploration to do on the mechanism of collaboration, but let's talk a little bit about place and what it means to place. So Birgit, we've got over $1 billion invested up here, and in the span of a relatively short time, and given other developments, we've got all these state-of-the-art sort of structures here. In economic development, is that the name of the game? Is that what it's all about? Do we win?
We have already won with what's happened up here, but every economic developer that I know and every region that is represented here is looking for a game changer. It's looking over time about how to diversify their economy, whether that's Cincinnati or Cleveland. So we were given the gift of these 5 institutions that gave us the opportunity to really look at a totally new economic development strategy, not giving up our manufacturing strategy, which you heard is coming back. We have always had a very strong manufacturing base, but it plays very importantly into what you've heard here today. If any one of the docs or the researchers are actually looking for or invent something, have an idea, want to improve on a device, what are you going to do? You need engineers, you need prototypers, you need tool and die makers, you need all of that base that we've had here for 100 years to actually make happen what these folks up here are doing on this hill. So the game changer that Bruce Katz talked about in his previous conversation actually is happening between these 5 institutions and gave us, as an economic development organization, a totally different thing to market. Are we marketing the buildings? No. What we market is this cluster that is growing up here of incredible talent and intellectual capacity. That is what we're really marketing. The research that goes on there, the healthcare that goes on here, and the collaboration that happens between those 5 institutions. Most importantly, it helps in talent attraction. If I'm in Boston, in Silicon Valley, in Sweden, or in Germany, and I look at coming to Van Andel or Spectrum or any of the others, I also look at what else can I do? How can I collaborate? I don't just come to be a doc at Spectrum or Mercy Health. I still have to get used to that. I also come to be a professor at Grand Valley or Michigan State. I come to be a researcher at the Van Andel Institute. The other spin-offs that we have seen, or the other growth that we have seen, are in our medical device industries. We have a cluster of over 40 med device companies. They are building on this collaboration up here. We manage that cluster. We have seen our incubator grow, which is housed with Grand Valley. We have seen venture capital grow for med device. Spectrum Health now has Spectrum Innovations. There are spin-offs coming out of there. So that is our economic development strategy. It's not about the buildings. It's about what's happening in the buildings and commercializing it into high-paying jobs and talent attraction.
Excellent, excellent. That's the payoff. Just before moving on to Rick, is there a formality to cluster formation? Do we have a set number of clusters? We talk about knowledge cluster. What are some of the other ones that?
Well, we have a very, very deep advanced manufacturing cluster that is still the largest part of our economy. The second largest cluster is, in fact, the 5 institutions that are sitting up here. It is the life sciences, health sciences cluster. Another large cluster that Bruce mentioned is the food processing and agricultural cluster. And then, of course, education, et cetera. So we have a number of clusters which give this region an incredible opportunity at diversification and not being dependent and not being hit as hard when strange things happen in the world economy, because some of them are very counter-cyclical.
Excellent, thank you. Rick, I'm going to give you sort of 2 parts, if it's okay. If you want to piggyback on anything that Roger was speaking about, how the co-opetition thing works, that's helpful. And also, if you would, let's bring this a little bit to the human side. What does all this activity collaboration mean to persons? You talked about destination healthcare. I assume destination healthcare means people come here to receive medical help. But what else does it bring? Who else comes here, and what does that do for our community?
Let me just add to the comment that Roger made. I think what you're going to see going forward, we've had a lot of good interaction. I think you're going to see going forward a lot more interaction between various healthcare players. I think you're going to have to do that. And so just exactly how they'll all align. One of the reasons I think it works in this area is because we get along well. We like each other, and so we don't have that yes, we do compete, but it isn't, I can't be in the same room with him kind of thing. So, but I do think that that's going to be more evident going forward, even more so than we've ever had in the past. So that's one issue. I think on destination health, I might just mention, Brian, that's a term coined a few years ago, and it really has to really means, will people come to Grand Rapids? Will people come here to get their care? And why would they do that versus go somewhere else? There's a lot of communities that have very nice facilities, a lot of communities that have good physicians, good people. And so we really looked at what do we need to add here to get people to look at us seriously? And it really starts with the clinicians. You have to have the kinds of physicians that draw people here. And so Birgit and I have spent a great deal of time talking about how do we get people here and how do you recruit the entire family and all those kind of things. And we've been very successful bringing people not only from across the United States, but really across Europe. And we just brought in a physician from India. And these are not just physicians. These are people who have international renowned, in many cases, research capabilities. And in most cases, they're researchers and clinicians. And so you meld those things together, you make it attractive to come here. And again, I go back to one of my previous statements, Brian. It's really not about just the cluster of things we have on the medical mile. It's really about the attitude of the people. That's what strikes these physicians when they get here. So when you can recruit those, just remember that talent begets talent. So once you have recruited one entourage, it's never an individual, it's always an entourage, it then makes it attractive for the next entourage to come, and then the next one comes. And really, in many instances, it's not the ability to be able to absorb all those that's the problem. It's how many can you afford to do, and how can you onboard those people in a reasonable time frame. And that's part of the issue that you have. But nevertheless, it certainly is something that's very apparent, and we've been very successful at it.
Great. Talent begets talent. That's
Absolutely.
You bet.
that's dynamic. Mr. Haas, so place, talent begetting talent. What does place, what does collaboration mean to place as far as your institution trying to even attract students? Is that helpful?
It's absolutely critical. Our main campus, of course, is, as mentioned before, in Allendale, which is about 12 miles from here. If you go up on our new library, you can see into Grand Rapids now. 50 years ago, you wouldn't have even imagined that as well. But yes, it is about place. In fact, when I think about place, I think about the 3.3 million riders each year going back and forth those 12 miles. Every 6 minutes there's a bus going back and forth between place. We recruit, right now, 40% of our students coming from Southeast Michigan, coming over here. I mentioned the other states that are coming here and other countries as well. It's absolutely critical. We have a rural campus, and we're kind of dualistic in mission. We're an urban campus as well. So that connection is critical. And then, of course, it's what else are we doing with our intellectual assets? As Birgit was sharing as well, right up here in the Cook DeVos, we have, for the last 10 years, been an incubator. We have pushed out 9 new companies. We've had $70 million of investment, 34 commercialized products as well. And that's all driven because we are able to keep the talent right here. The idea of clinicals and internships, so critical. It is about the place and about those connections with many industries and companies in the health arena and beyond as well. And when I can show to folks that 75% of those that are working in the most recent graduating class, which was 5,300, are working right here in West Michigan, we're making those connections. It's about attracting, it's about then retaining them, and place is so critical with the partnerships that we have with so many. So I continue to the word, it's just not collaboration, but it really is about complementing one another.
It's interesting, Jerry Tubergen earlier spoke that some of the nexus of the motivation for much of this activity has been on how do we get our kids to come back, or how do we get them to stay, right? I mean, because that's our future talent. Will you remark, what is the retention rate for students at GVSU to stay here in the state of Michigan and in our community? Do you have that information?
Well, we're, for total numbers in most recent class, we're in the 90%, 84% are staying in Michigan,
84.
working 75% working in Grand Rapids and the surrounding communities.
Awesome.
We're a brain gain.
Brain gain.
Not brain.
I love it. I love it.
Not
So David, I was going to talk a little bit about with you, or ask you to speak about the culture of innovation. But you know, we've covered a lot of ground about attracting talent here, and your workforce, your body is hugely diverse. How many languages, cultures do you think you employ over there?
At
Just
least
guess.
a couple dozen.
Couple dozen.
Yeah.
What has been, it's obviously strong work for you to attract them for the work that they want to do, but what about the living part of it? How are we doing as a community in welcoming them, encouraging them to stay, and integrating them in the community? What's your feeling about that?
Well, it's a really important part of attracting good talent. The community at large plays a very important role in making that all work. But it starts with the smaller community within the discipline of what you're trying to attract them to. And by that, what I mean is that we look for what I call the entrepreneurial quotient within attracting our talent. The types of people that are comfortable not with the big security blanket wrapped around them, but want to play and draw outside the lines a little bit. They want to push the boundaries. And then they're comfortable doing that. I grew up in an entrepreneurial home, and my dad and his business partner were both entrepreneurs. So I understand the importance of that and what drives people to make that want to happen. But creating that culture, you cannot create entrepreneurs, but you can create a culture where entrepreneurs can be successful. And I think the community at large plays a huge role in doing that. You not only want to work here, you want to live here, you want to play here, you want to raise a family here. You have to have all the aspects that go with that. I've always said that when I'm out recruiting, if I can get them here, I've got them. But it's a big step to get them from saying, okay, I'm kind of interested, to physically moving and getting them here for an interview. Once you do that and they see what happens around here, then they begin to understand. It's one thing to talk about all the collaboration that goes on here. It's another thing to live it and feel it. There is an energy that gets driven out of that. There is an excitement that happens with that. And it's very important, I think, that these people see that and see that there are opportunities for them if they come here. Nobody wants to be stifled in their creativity. Nobody wants to be shut off from what it is they want to pursue, their passion of research or whatever it is. But they have to see that the community also embraces that. You have to be willing to fail upon occasion and learn from that. You have to be willing to go out and support those types of people financially and other ways. You have to be willing to give them the resources from which they can then do that thing they do, that magic, so to speak, that they're capable of doing. But it's a community at large that has to embrace this. I mean, you're seeing currently today a community with Art Prize going on and all sorts of other things. You're seeing a community coming together and embracing a piece of the culture of this community. That's a great message to be sending. When I try to recruit, it's these 2 weeks out of the year that I try to bring people here so they can see that. You know, it's one of those great aspects of being in Grand Rapids in West Michigan. But it is that culture that's very important, and without that culture, I don't think you get the best and the brightest from around the world to say, okay, I'm willing to rip up the stakes and move my family here to be able to do what I want to do. They have to have that overarching reason to want to come.
So innovation, not just being tier one visionary and looking at a forest and taking a risk on clearing out a golf course, you've got to create an environment for your entrepreneurs, your innovators to feel like they can aspire, but they can also be safe.
Absolutely. The visionary starts the process, and the tier one, of course, sees the golf course. The tier twos come in and say, oh, there's a golf course here, I can build homes here, I can build a restaurant here, I can do all those types of things. But it also is the culture. Do people want to live here? Do people want to play here? Is the culture conducive to the type of work that I want to do? Can I expand and be fulfilled in my vision of what I want to do with my life in this culture? Are you accepting? Are there the cultural activities, such as Art Prize and others, that are entertaining, but do you have the support mechanisms to make sure that those people will also feel welcome?
Excellent, thank you. So it's not just the zombie walks and the pillow fights, right? I'm going to sort of point quickly to the timekeeper to understand, Ginny Seaforth, if I'm doing well on time, but I also want to get to our last two. Are we doing good? Thank you. Then what I'll do, Luann, I'm going to skip and come back to you because I'd like you to close a little bit later. Roger, we all are in a mad race across the country for talent, and we talked a lot about talent attraction and the things that happen here. And if you lay over the idea of talent attraction with the secret sauce that we have in terms of collaboration, we have a certain way of collaborating. I wonder, do you suppose the next gen, these people we're trying to attract, have the same model for collaboration? Do they collaborate in the same way?
Great question, and I would say that the models of collaboration are very different in the next generations that we're trying to attract. And what brought all of this resource together was in large part the size of this community. Pardon me. And we run into each other at each other's fundraisers, at events throughout the community. Our board members know each other. The size of this community has allowed us to have a measure of accountability that I think larger communities may not have. Mm-hmm. And so it fosters that kind of, because we know each other, and as Rick said, we like each other. It fosters that kind of cooperation. And for us, it's been face-to-face. A lot of it's face-to-face relationships. And I think the generations that are following us and the ones we're trying to reach, they're very good at social networking, much better than we are. In fact, they disclose too much, if anything, and but they live with that. And
Facebook, Twitter, and that sort of.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Very free to self-disclose and very free to work together and interact. So I think that one thing that we can do is to help them. And as we've said before, David cannot. His scientists can't do what they need to do without us collaborating, because he has to be, you can't just play with one or the other. It has to be both, because we have the clinical material and the research material, the pathology, all that has to add up together. Right. So neither one of us have it by ourselves. But with the young people coming up, we can help them, because we run into each other at church, at the country club, at social gatherings, at service clubs, etc. I think there's going to be less of that in the future. And so maybe we can help with Grid 70, with coffee shops, with Start Garden, things of that nature, giving this generation some more face time with one another.
Great. I'm glad you mentioned those two or three, because I believe some of our guests are going to be invited to tour those things. And that really, I'm not one of the panelists here, but if I look forward to all the things that we've solved, the thing I think we really do have to solve is how does the next generation really do the same types of collaborative work we do, but differently.
Yes, different.
Thank you. I believe that we will eventually have some time for some questions from the audience. Luann Simon, so we've talked about sort of the win-win that occurs by being able to both supply talent to the collaboration, the collaborative, but also that it reflects well on MSU and others in being able to attract the student population. If there's more about that you'd like to say, please do, but what do you see as next? What's next? What's the promise yet to be done on this Hill and in our community?
Well, I think that if you look at where we are against a pro forma that we all put together 8 years ago, we're exceeding our pro forma to the extent we have more faculty here than we imagined. The student caliber has increased beyond what we would have imagined, and the relationships have gotten stronger than we imagined. And Dean Rapley is very much a part of this community and all of the social and informal interactions that happen to embed a medical school in a community. Yeah. The next step is really to grow in those dimensions. One of the things we do not have is a practice here. It was a conscious decision to put our faculty, our clinician researchers, our translational researchers in partnership with these institutions. We've also strengthened the partnerships with with Grand Valley and engineering and other areas that were not part of that original mix. Our students are going over the bridge to do graduate programs with Van Andel. So all of those things I think are going to grow and develop. What we want to have is this be, for Michigan State University, to be the greatest assist leader for this community. And that each of the institutions that are our partners are much better as a result of the capacity for us to work together and embed people in their organizations. As a result, we want to be better on all those quantitative measures that universities are also measured on, but also we want to be a place with a real mission for this community and for this state, and for the state to move forward. You know, we're working in Detroit, but Grand Rapids has to be one of those real beacons, West Michigan, for the development of the state and for the nation.
Great, great. So stay tuned. Best is yet to come. So there you have it, right? A healthy dose of philanthropy, an inspiring Tier 1 vision, a mix of business leaders, thought leaders, public leaders, the value of the community and the benefit of the community. You stir it strategically, you keep the co-opetition temperature just right, you have a beer, you enjoy some art, right? Maybe you go down to the market and get some bread, but you come back and viola, as in voila, you have the medical mile. So I'm hoping that you folks have been able to sort of tell what we're cooking, and stay tuned. So thank you very much for the panel. I want to thank you very much. They've been brilliant. And I apologize for having had my back to the side of the audience, but you have a screen, so did you get my good side? I'm assuming we've got some time, Lee, for some questions, and I don't know if you want people to shout them out or if there's a microphone. There's a microphone there. So any questions for any one of our panels? About 5 minutes.
Hi, I'm Chris Ronayne. I'm with University Circle in Cleveland, Ohio. It's home to Case Western Reserve, University Hospitals, and the Cleveland Clinic. I wanted to first thank you for hosting us here. It's a great city, and I wanted to ask specifically about the medical mile, square mile, and your thoughts on a neighborhood there. We've coalesced with a group of anchor districts from Pittsburgh to Detroit and Cincinnati, Philadelphia, Boston. Common denominator in the EdMed districts are that they're fast becoming, if not the fastest growing resident district, the second fastest in their respective cities. I think if you look back at places like the Research Triangle, what they feel they missed and they're going back to redo is the resident mixed-use development side of it. Just curious if that's on your radar here in the district, if you have any plans to build a neighborhood and retain your EdMed worker in a place-based strategy. Thanks.
Everybody's nodding. Who's going?
Rick, I'm thinking he's addressing that to you.
Well, I think what we have said for a long time is that we need some affordable housing within walking distance of this mile. And there has been a lot of development downtown, but I would imagine it depends on your economic status whether you consider it to be reasonable or not. But you know, medical students don't make a lot of money, residents don't make a lot of money, and so we have a lot of people who are incredibly bright and we want to keep here, and so we need affordable housing within walking distance. That has been touted everywhere. I know there's a lot of people talking about a lot of different things, but I think that's probably the one area that I would like to stress that we need to develop more than we have up to this point.
And I can relate to that too. With right across the river, we have one of our main parts of the Grand Valley State University. We work with the West Side folks very clearly. And now we have purchased property. This is Ford Freeway that we're on right here. On the other side, north of the Ford Freeway. Again, working with the community leaders, community group, to ensure that that type of atmosphere is created so that we have a social justice perspective, but we also understand that we will be moving ahead in certain needs for the community as a whole. That balance has to be there.
And if I could add something, Eric DeLong, the Assistant City Manager, sitting right in front of me. The City of Grand Rapids, in collaboration with all of the organizations represented up here, has done a study of this corridor, and they're not just the straight corridor, but the adjacent communities and residential communities, to engage them in the conversation of the growth of these institutions and how it impacts residential neighborhoods, and look at, so that they stay in place, how can we really help those neighborhoods get integrated and have the kind of housing that is being discussed here. Icon on Bond, which is just down the street, is a large residential housing. It's completely full. It's rental property. So yes, the institutions and the city and the economic development organizations were all working on not just the corridor, but the surrounding neighborhoods to address exactly what you asked. Yeah.
Very good. Back here on the right, and then further to the right.
Hi. Thank you all so much. I'm Tara from Greensboro, North Carolina. And my real question is, where are the rapids in Grand Rapids? I hope somebody will answer that. But my question for you this morning is, in each of your descriptions of how you've come together, you refer indirectly or directly to this kind of secret sauce of the can-do attitude. And I'm wondering if you have any quick reflections for us on how to promote that in our communities.
Anyone? David,
Somebody
go ahead,
wants to
jump in.
jump in on that? It's probably the hardest part, and some of people might call it the West Michigan nice, some people might call it something else, but it is a culture that started long before Medical Mile started, and it's a culture that maybe came with, you know, the immigrants when they first founded the area, whatever you want to call it. But it is a culture that has pervaded, and a culture that over the long haul has survived. It's a hard work ethic. It's a collaborative ethic. I mean, when you talk about philanthropy, Grand Rapids is second only to Salt Lake in the giving of money in philanthropic causes. But it also is, I think, spawned from a lot of entrepreneurs that happen to be in the area and continued to live here and promote that type of a culture. It's not something you just go out and say, okay, tomorrow we're going to have this. It's something you're going to have to put the building blocks in place over the long haul to create. But it is a lot of smaller, different pieces coming together that make that whole thing work. Is it secret? It's secret in the sense that there's so many moving parts to it. It's not easy to describe, but I believe any community, given the willingness, can get there. And it takes the visionaries, the business leaders to step forward. It takes the community leaders to step forward, the governmental leaders to step forward and say, we're going to work together. We're not going to compete with each other. We're not going to tear each other down. We're going to build each other up, and we're going to work together, and we're going to make this happen. And once it starts, I think it was said here, you know, talent attracts talent. Once it starts, those types of people then are attracted to that, and it continues to pervade.
If I could add to that, for example, if you, we just did our branding study with our alumni and our students, and the phrase they use to describe us is hardworking excellence. And part of that is being the capacity to decide that you're going to be among the best in the world, that you're going to work hard to do it, and that working hard to achieve that is a very much a positive instead of a negative. The second piece of that is we as an institution, if you rank us in the top 100 in the world, have kept that sort of land-grant spirit alive. It's not necessarily great if you look at all the quantitative metrics, because there's no good measure to be an assist leader. But it is important in trying to put together the kind of partnership collaborations that we've done over a period of time, and not to confuse that working together or a little bit of that being prepared to be the assist leader with not having the passion to be among the world's best. And I think we've been able collectively to achieve that, and I think that Grand Rapids, West Michigan represents that determined passion to be among the world's best, if not the best, at the same time have this enormous caring about people.
Public-private partnerships is where it's at, and it's not being complacent at the same time. So we're getting it done. We're getting it done together.
I'm getting the high sign here, so I'm apologizing that I won't have a chance for additional questions, and I saw you over here, my apologies. But feel free to contact any one of these panelists. They're available, they're open, their bios are in your programs. We can connect you, and they're very open to sharing and trying to answer the question. By the way, there's no rapids in the rapids because we consume them with this collaborative Kool-Aid making here that we got going on. So again, my many thanks to the panel, and welcome to Grand Rapids.